The basics of screen readers, including VoiceOver. In order to understand how we can use a screen reader to operate our devices, we must backtrack and talk about a fundamental concept when it comes to humans and computers getting along. So let's talk about the term focus when it comes to humans and computers. Focus is crucial in our communication with computers as it tells the computers where to perform actions. For example, on a PC computer, if I want to open an app from the desktop, I have to indicate to the computer where to focus and then to open that app. We usually do this with a mouse pointer, moving it over top of a shortcut, and then double left-clicking with the mouse. This tells the computer to focus on that shortcut and then to open it. On a smartphone, that process is shortened even further as we don't need a mouse pointer because we just use our finger to tap the screen at certain spots. This tells the phone to focus on that spot and then activate whatever is under our finger. While this process is reduced to just one step on the phone, it is still two separate actions as it tells the phone to focus on a spot and activate at the same time. This becomes problematic for blind users as we cannot see the screen and use our eyes to guide our fingers into the correct location. Often, we need to touch things to identify them, and this holds true for smartphones as well. Therefore, one of the main purposes of a screen reader is to verbalize where the focus is on a computer or phone. The screen reader does this by announcing the focus whenever we touch the screen, because focus moves to wherever we touch, and the screen reader announces the new focus. Once we get the focus into the correct position, we then tell the phone to activate wherever the focus is located. We activate under the focus using a one-finger double tap. Fortunately, we do not need to perform the double tap in the exact spot where the focus is located, as this would be difficult without usable vision. In fact, when we do the one-finger double tap, we can do that anywhere on the screen and it will activate wherever we left the focus. In other words, the focus can be down in the bottom left corner of the screen, but we can do the one-finger double tap in the center of the screen because the phone knows to activate wherever the focus is and not in the exact spot where we actually tap the screen. The important thing to remember is that we have to do the double tap quickly and in the same spot, or our phone will think we are just moving the focus into a new spot. Again, the double tap needs to be quick and like a piston, straight up and down, quickly. To be frank, the majority of our work on the phone is just getting the focus into the correct position so that we can do a one-finger double tap anywhere on the screen. In fact, there are more than 35 different finger gestures, but thankfully we only really use less than 10 of them on a regular basis. As you've seen so far, we can manually move the focus around just by touching different spots on the screen. This means that if we put apps we use a lot into easily accessible locations, it becomes easier to find and activate those apps. For example, my phone app is located in my bottom left corner, as it is a very easy spot to locate with my fingers. I tend to put other apps that I don't use a lot into the center of the screen, as those spots are harder to locate quickly and efficiently by just touching the screen where I think those apps are located. This also means that as we get to know apps and the locations of buttons, links, edit fields, and other on-screen items, we can learn their position and get better at finding those locations. That being said, however, there are often many items on the screen, and they can get quite small, so locating them by exploration is not always the most efficient and easiest of tasks. Thankfully, we have other means of moving the focus around the screen. But before we introduce this new method, let's backtrack a little and talk about another way that screen readers help us use the phone non-visually. One feature of screen readers is that when the screen changes, the screen reader reads down the entire page. It makes note of everything on the page. Essentially, it reads down the entire page and makes note of each type of item that is on the screen. Imagine the screen reader pulling some thread behind itself as it reads down the page. The end result would be that every item on the screen is connected by this invisible piece of string. If this was the case, then we could just tell the screen reader to move to the next item repeatedly until we reach the spot we are seeking. Additionally, we can tell our screen reader to move in reverse order along the invisible string and go to the previous item on the screen as well. This is what allows us to move focus this second way, where we can just indicate to the screen reader to move to the next item on the screen or the previous item on the screen. We accomplish this using one-finger swipes to the right or to the left. If we want to go to the next item on the screen, we just take one finger and quickly swipe from left to right across the screen. This is the same gesture that we used to use when sighted to scroll one page to the right, but now this just moves the focus to the next item on the screen. Likewise, if we want to move to the previous item, we just one finger swipe left. That is, we move our finger from right to left on the screen. Note that it is often better to do these swipes quickly and shortly. We do not want long, extended swipes that cover most of the screen. When doing swipes, shorter and faster is almost always better. Also keep in mind that it does not matter where we do our swipes, as the screen reader recognizes that gesture done anywhere and will move the focus forward to whatever the next item is on the screen. Another great feature of VoiceOver is that this screen reader makes some distinct sounds after we do particular gestures. For example, the one-finger double tap gesture, which activates items, has a very distinct pop sound that gives the user clear feedback that the phone understood the gesture and is performing the activate action. Likewise, whenever the screen changes, VoiceOver makes a particular sound that lets the user know that the screen has changed. Often, these sounds are accompanied by each other as we activate a button which causes the screen to change. These sounds let us know what has happened without having to wait for verbalization. Getting used to these sound cues and the language VoiceOver uses when verbalizing is crucial to our development as non-visual phone users. Pay attention in the early stages to the verbal feedback provided by your screen reader. Try to learn and understand why the screen reader is saying those things at that point, as mastering these cues can unlock your full potential.
All right, thank you, AI chat lady person, I guess. So let's do some demonstrations of what we've talked about so far. I'm going to grab my phone and we'll do a test run of some VoiceOver basics. Okay, so we're going to navigate to my home screen on my phone. And I'm going to touch the top left corner.
Settings.
And it says Settings. I can also touch in the bottom left corner.
Dock. Phone.
And that's where my phone app is. If I go to the bottom right corner, that's where my book player app is.
Bard Mobile.
Likewise, I can touch in the middle.
Sensi.
I can even drag my finger around the screen.
Seeing A. Mona. Be My Eye. Sirius. Overcast. Dice. See. Insta. NF. Sensi. Bible.
And it will tell me what I'm touching. Let's go back to the phone example. If I want to launch the phone app, I touch down in the bottom left.
Dock. Phone.
I get the focus on phone. Now I can do a one finger double tap in the middle.
Phone. Recents. Heading.
And that has opened up the phone app. Okay, so for the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go through all the different gestures. So I'm going to go into a special practice area. Anybody should be able to do this on your phone if VoiceOver is running. I'm going to do a 4-finger double tap. Now I have to turn my phone sideways in order to get all 4 fingers on the screen. I don't want to hold my 4 fingers together. I have a little bit of space between them, but I'm just going to tap twice on the screen with all 4 fingers.
Starting help. To stop help, perform a 4-finger double tap or 2-finger scrub, or press escape on the keyboard.
And we are now in help mode. Once we're in help mode, what we can do is we can practice our gestures. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go through the series of gestures and kind of talk about them. We start first with the 1-finger taps. 1-finger tap.
Touch. Speak item.
Is the touch gesture. That's the same as dragging your finger around the screen. We also call that explore or touch by explore. Let's see what happens if we do a 1-finger double tap.
1-finger double tap. Activate.
Activate. So wherever the focus is on the screen, doing the 1-finger double tap will activate wherever the focus is. All right, let's do 1-finger triple tap.
1-finger triple tap. Perform long press.
That is the long press gesture. If VoiceOver is not running, sighted people can take their finger and place it on the screen and perform a long press. The long press is kind of like on a computer if you do a right click. It typically opens up a menu, and what populates or what shows up in that menu is dependent upon what you've done a long press on. Sometimes you do a long press and it shows a menu with a bunch of different options, so it just depends on where the focus is. All right, I'm going to do one finger quadruple. This is 4 taps in a row, and it's got to be pretty quick. For me, I do da-da-da-da.
One finger quadruple tap, home.
Right now, I have that gesture set to go to my home screen. Typically, by default, that would say secondary activate, but none of us ever really use that. So I have reprogrammed my gesture. If I do that gesture, it goes to my home screen. As a side note, we can reprogram gestures, and we'll talk about that in a later lesson. All right, let's jump to the 2 finger taps. If I do a 2 finger single tap,
2 finger single tap, toggle speech.
it says toggle speech. Essentially, that is the shut up gesture, meaning if I do that on my phone, VoiceOver will stop talking. So if it's in the middle of reading a long sentence, it will actually pause right there in the middle. If I want to resume, I can do a 2 finger single tap and it will resume. Let's do 2 finger double tap.
2 finger double tap, magic tap.
That's called magic tap. The reason why they call it magic tap is because it does quite a few different things. And again, kind of like the long press, this depends on what your phone is doing. We'll talk about the 3 most popular things that the 2 finger double tap or magic tap does. The first is in relation to phone calls. If your phone starts to receive a phone call, you can do a 2 finger double tap to answer the phone. Likewise, when you're done talking to the person, if you want to hang up, you can just do a 2 finger double tap and it will hang up the phone. So magic tap is associated with answering and hanging up the phone. The magic tap is also useful when we want to use dictation. By dictation, what I mean is when we want the phone to type the words that we are saying. So if I go to a text field, say maybe I wanted to text my wife, I could go to that text field and get the focus into that text field and then do a 2 finger double tap, and VoiceOver will then dictate the words that I say. When I'm done with the message, I do a 2 finger double tap and VoiceOver will stop dictation. Okay, the third thing that I'm going to talk about is the ability of VoiceOver to play and pause our media, our music, our TV, our radio, things like that, anything associated with media. And so if I'm listening to a movie and I want it to stop, 2 finger double tap acts like a pause button. If I'm listening to a book, again, 2 finger double tap acts like a pause button. If I'm on my home screen and nothing else is happening on my phone and I do a 2 finger double tap, there's a reasonable chance that it will start to play whatever the last media that I had playing. And I listen to a lot of podcasts, so a lot of times if I just do that from my home screen, it will just start to play whatever the last podcast that I was listening to. There are a number of other things that the 2 finger double tap will do, but we're not going to really cover it. Again, it just depends on what your phone is doing. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to go 2 finger triple tap.
2 finger triple tap, show item chooser.
Item chooser. This is really useful when we have a keyboard or if we're on a Mac. And what that does is it takes every single item that's on the screen, and instead of listing everything as it appears visually on the screen, it will then list everything alphabetically. So if I open up a page and there's 100 items on the screen, I could open the item chooser and then I could just start hitting the first letter of whatever I was looking for. Maybe a login button. I could hit the letter L and it would jump all the way down to all the items that start with L. It's a very much quicker way of getting to find things using the item chooser. On our phone, we typically don't use it all that much. It's not that useful, but A lot of times our phone, there is so much less clutter on the screen. So just a case where we just don't use it quite as often. All right, moving on, 2-finger quadruple.
2-finger quadruple tap. Open quick settings.
Quick settings is a way for us to adjust certain VoiceOver settings without having to go all the way into the settings app. It is a quicker way to make certain adjustments to VoiceOver, especially as it relates to Braille and any sort of device that you have connected to your phone that uses Braille. A lot of times you can go into quick settings and make some adjustments right on the fly. All right, moving on, 3-finger single tap.
3-finger single tap. Read item summary.
Item summary, I also call this gesture the where am I. If you do this gesture, then VoiceOver will tell you information about the focus. It'll tell you about the item. It might even tell you where it's located on the screen. You can get a lot of information about where am I by doing the 3-finger single tap. 3-finger double tap, I'm going to go ahead and do that.
3-finger double tap. Toggle mute.
It says toggle mute. What that effectively does is that effectively turns the speech part of VoiceOver off. Bearing in mind that VoiceOver can also use Braille as a communications method. And so sometimes if people are using Braille, they don't want VoiceOver to say things verbally to the world. And so there's a time when you might want to use VoiceOver without the speech portion of it. Typically though, you will do this gesture by accident. And VoiceOver will say toggle speech or something along those lines. It'll start to be quiet. VoiceOver will continue to make taps and beeps and gesture or sounds, but it's not going to verbalize anything. All right, moving on, 3-finger triple tap.
3-finger triple tap. Toggle screen curtain.
That is a feature called the screen curtain. Essentially, when the screen curtain is on, the screen is completely black. Kind of think of like a curtain at a play. If the curtain is down, you can't see the stage. Same kind of concept. Why would we do that? Well, for people like myself who have absolutely no usable vision at all, having the screen turned on, all that does is waste my battery. So I tend to leave my screen completely off because it doesn't make any difference to me at all. I'm still going to use the phone the same way. So if I turn the screen off, the battery will tend to last considerably longer. A lot of times I can get through the entire day without having to charge my battery because the screen is not powered on. Okay, 3-finger quadruple tap.
3-finger quadruple tap. Copy speech to clipboard.
Here's a little known but very useful gesture. And what it does is the last thing that VoiceOver said, if you do this gesture, it will copy the last thing VoiceOver says to the clipboard. So for example, if I'm in an email and somebody has sent me an account number, I can get VoiceOver to read that account number out loud and then do this gesture, and then it will copy that account number to my clipboard where I can go to another place and then I can paste that content of the clipboard to another spot. Okay, let's talk about 4-finger taps. 4-finger single tap, we actually have 2 separate 4-finger single taps depending on where you do it on the screen. If you do it down here at the bottom, that will move the focus to the very last item. Move to first item, that will move to the first item on the screen. I'm not going to do 4-finger double tap as that will kick us out of help mode, and I don't want to do that right now. I will do the 4-finger triple tap.
4-finger triple tap.
Right now, mine is not set to anything. By default, you can get some descriptive elements of VoiceOver by doing that. Okay, so now let's talk about the swipe gestures. I'll start with 1-finger swipe to the right.
1-finger swipe right. Move to next item.
And that is the whole invisible string idea, where everything on the screen itself is connected by this invisible piece of string. You flick to the right, you go to the next item on the piece of string. If I flick to the left,
1-finger swipe left. Move to previous item.
It moves to previous item. Okay, so this is a distinction, right? We do not really ever navigate by going up and down. If I do one finger swipe down,
One finger swipe down. Next rotor item.
it says something about the rotor, next rotor item. If I do one finger swipe up,
One finger swipe up. Previous rotor item.
again, mentioning something about the rotor, which is a gesture we have not talked about. We will talk about the rotor here at the end, but just keep in mind that one finger swipes up or down. All they do is they interact with this weird rotor thing that we'll talk about. Okay, I'm going to now switch to two finger swipes. If I do two finger swipe down,
Two finger swipe down. Read all from current item.
read all. Essentially, that tells VoiceOver to wherever it's at on the screen, wherever the focus is, to begin reading down the entire rest of the screen. So, for example, if I get into an email and I can tell it's a long email, I can do a two finger swipe down and I can set my phone down, walk across the room, and it will continue to read until it gets all the way to the bottom of the screen. So let's check out two finger swipe up.
Two finger swipe up. Move to top of document.
That will essentially move to the top of the document and start to read down. I have changed that gesture on my phone, but by default, two finger swipe up moves the focus to the top of the screen and starts to read down. I have also reprogrammed my two finger swipes to the right,
Two finger swipe right. Move to next heading.
which moves to the next heading, and two finger swipe left.
Two finger swipe left. Move to previous heading.
And again, that just displays the customization of VoiceOver. I'm not going to talk about headings right now, but that is a very convenient way to navigate through the screen. So let's talk about three finger swipes. If I do three finger swipe down,
Three finger swipe down. Scroll up.
scroll up, three finger swipe up,
Three finger swipe up. Scroll down.
and essentially the three finger swipes are now the way that we scroll through our pages. If I am on a page and I want to go down one page, I do a three finger swipe up, like I'm pushing the page away from me to go down to the next page. If I want to go to the next page to the right, I do a three finger swipe to the left, from right to the left, almost like I'm turning a page in a book, and that will go to the next page to the right. So three finger swipes have now become part of scrolling. Four finger swipes, if I remember correctly, I don't think that those are set anything by default, so I'm not going to typically cover those. The next thing that we need to talk about is the rotor gesture. So the rotor is a gesture that we do on the screen, and it's kind of like twisting the cap on a bottle. Think about taking two fingers. I tend to use my thumb and my middle finger, and I hold them about an inch apart, about the size of a quarter. And I bring them down to the screen, and as soon as my fingers hit the screen, I twist, doing a twisting motion like I'm twisting a bottle cap. The trick is that the fingers start to twist as soon as they hit the screen. When it does, your phone will recognize that as a rotor gesture. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to twist counterclockwise.
Two finger rotate counterclockwise. Previous rotor.
And that twists the rotor counterclockwise. If I do it the opposite direction,
Two finger rotate clockwise. Next rotor.
next rotor. So the rotor can be spun in either direction. Think of the rotor almost like the big wheel on The Price is Right, where every time you turn the rotor one turn, you're going to go to a new option on the rotor. We'll have a lesson on the rotor in more detail, but for now, just remember that the rotor is a wheel of options, and you can turn that wheel. Every time you turn the wheel to the next option, it'll tell you what that next option is. Once we spin the rotor to an option, then if we want to go down into sub-option settings, that's when we flick up or flick down. So spin the rotor to your desired setting, and then flick up or flick down to get into a little bit more fine control for whatever that setting or whatever that option on the rotor is. And then finally, I'm going to mention the last gesture, which is the two finger scrub. This is a gesture that almost acts like a cancel button. Anytime there's a cancel button on the screen, if we do this gesture, it will trigger the cancel button. Likewise, if there is a back button anywhere on the screen, doing this gesture will trigger that back button for you or activate that back button for you. This doesn't work in every app, but there's many apps that this will work in. So in order to do that particular gesture, you hold 2 fingers side by side. I'm going to use the 2 fingers on my right hand. So middle finger, pointer finger, I hold them side by side. And I'm going to start on the left side of the screen, and I'm going to swipe to the right, come back to the left, and finish on the right. So there's 3 side-to-side motions, and it's almost like your fingers are scrubbing the screen. In essence, it's almost like making a Z, where you start on the left, you go to the right, you go back to the left, and you finish on the right. And when you do it, when I do it here, it's going to actually exit help mode. So let me do it.
2 finger scrub, escape, stopping help.
And now we have stopped help mode. Okay, so now I'm going to go through and I'm going to try and find some sound cues that we can use to identify some of the things that are happening on the phone.
Item activated. Scrolled page. Screen changed. Next rotor. Alert appeared. Secure text entered. Reachability started. Keyboard appeared. Keyboard disappeared.